Where does the idea for doing Layer Cake come to you? As I understand, you literally ran into the author on a train.
Should I just hold it? Yeah. Okay. Been through the wars. Yeah, I'm sure it does. Something Sony works. That's good. Yeah. No, we originally I was sent the book by the guy who first person invested in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, and he rang me up saying, "You got to read the novel," and I did. And when I didn't, because I said didn't have time. I was getting on the train to go to Belgium, and in Belgium to watch a football match, a soccer match, as you guys call it. And on the train, serendipity took place that I was sitting next to the author, which was, I couldn't believe it when he said, "I've written a book called Layer Cake." I was like, "I've just given that book," and I read it and liked it, and we decided to make a movie then and there.
What is it that attracts you to it right away? I mean, obviously, the screen version is very complex. I read somewhere that the author who adapted the screenplay said, well, first I wrote a 400-page version, like transcribing the novel, and then I counted on the filmmakers to find the film in there, which they did. But there's obviously a lot of complexity in the source material, which you've been able to really move pretty well over to the film. There's so many layers, and we don't really know psychologically where we are for a while, but we keep being intrigued. Talk about the process of creating the script that is the basis for this film.
It really was quite simple, because we had the book, so you had the whole story and the characterization. You had like a Bible for a reference, which makes life a lot easier. And then, as John wrote, it's 408 pages. I remember when he handed it in, and he actually thought that was a first draft. He had no idea, he'd never written a script before he did, so he didn't realize that there was a thing called page to screen sort of ratio. And I went, sorry, it's too long. But the good thing is that he had put it down in script form, the book. So then I just spent a couple of weeks with a red pen cutting scenes and combining characters, cutting characters, and just whittling it down to a length which became more manageable, and then just applying basic script logic. It's the one thing I've done is developed quite a few screenplays, so I know how to do it. And it was this was the first time I've done it from a book, and it's a lot easier because it's easier to how do I say this? It's easier to remove things and to create things from nowhere. So, as I said, we had it all, and it was just honing it so it fitted on the screen.
I understand that there's a similar process in documentary where if you make a transcript of your entire thing, then you can edit on paper in a certain way that will facilitate greatly the resulting film. It's a kind of a paper edit, which is in some ways what you're doing there. The notion of Daniel Craig as your lead, when does that pop into your head? It's obviously the unnamed character. We don't even realize, I think, the first time we see the film that this guy's name is never mentioned.
Same in the book. The last line is the last line of the novel as well, of the film. And Daniel came actually later in the process, because in the book the character is a lot younger. Well, not a lot younger, because Daniel, he's like 28, 29, turning about to turn 30. And I was, in the first draft, I was reading the script and thinking about casting, and names were coming up for sort of the 29-year-old British actors, and I was like, you know what, I don't think the audience are going to buy being lectured to by these kids. I think they're going to turn around and say, who are you to start telling us how to lead our lives, and with all this wisdom. I think a lot of people associate wisdom with age, and so I thought, let's make him slightly older. And as soon as we said that, Daniel's name came up, and he was the first actor we met and got on very well, and he had exactly the same aspirations for the film, and the same worries and concerns about the movie as I had about making it, and in the sense of what genre we had picked. And it was a match made in heaven, so thank God. Well, it was another gangster movie, and I'd made a few of them, and I mean, originally Guy was going to direct this, so it was, with Guy doing it, it was just like a cash cow. Like, as a producer, to be frank, I was thinking, great, he does it, put his name on it, we'll make it for not that much money and do very well out of it. He then pulled out, and then I was looking at it going, whoa, I didn't really want to hand it over to another director because I'd fallen in love with the script, and Guy and I had always wanted to make what I call a serious crime movie. Lock, Stock and Snatch were more fun, and so we just had to go for it. We just, I just looked there and I was just nervous that people would either be thinking we're making Lock, Stock 3 or just cashing in. I'm just following in Guy's footsteps just to make a quick buck. So I wanted to make sure I was making a movie that was stood up on its own 2 feet and push the genre in a way, and show that you can do these movies in a different manner, which is worth still paying money to go see.
You have a fabulous supporting cast, or really it's an ensemble cast. Colm Meaney, who we've gotten to know a lot in playing Irish style gangsters in various American and Irish and various films. Talk a little bit about that cast, because each of these guys brings in a certain stature, a certain persona, which adds the richness to their characters. Talk about how you were able to assemble all these great actors.
At first with difficulty, because I had no track record as a director, so people, I could get agents to take my call as a producer, which helps, so I could bash the agents around saying, you got to get your client to read it. But even then, they were like, well, come on, Matthew, you're a first-time director, and you're a producer, it's probably not going to be, do we really want to put our clients into this film, and there's no money as well, so, it all seems to be risk. But then they read the script and thought, well, actually it's a decent screenplay, and I think an agent doesn't often have the opportunity to hand a well-written screenplay over to their clients, which sort of gives a brownie point whether they do it or not. But what really changed the tide was Daniel saying yes, because Daniel's sort of like a magnet to other actors of well, then the film's got to be good because he's got such he's an actor's actor in the sense that they all admire him and respect him. So by him saying yes, a lot of the other actors suddenly felt secure enough to jump aboard.
One of the things that's interesting to me about the film is that there gets to be a sexual dimension to it too, because this character is intensely private. He's trying to get out of the life, and we see in some ways the conflict between his professional life and his personal private life, which allows sex of various kinds to insinuate itself into the story. Talk a little bit about that. I think it's very effective, and I think it adds a lot of juice to the film. Talk a little bit about the creation of that. That comes out of the book, I take it.
Yep, everything comes from the book. So it was all there, and what was great, I just like the idea that a man's downfall, or our character, is, I think in a lot of cases, and with history or friends or just fact, that women have caused men more problem than probably anything else, in the sense that they don't think as clearly as they should be amongst, when they're with, if a pretty girl comes in the room, men can behave pretty stupidly rather quickly. And in the book, what I also liked about the character is its less is more approach, and it was like that in the book, where you're like, oh God, I can't believe that just happened. All the scenes were straight from the novel. So yeah, I think it works. Yeah,
There's a scene, again, I've just seen it one time, and you've seen it many times, so you have an advantage over me, but I recall Daniel's character sitting there, without his shirt in a room, and he's expecting a certain scenario, a certain sexual, erotic scenario, and in fact something very different happens, and it adds a lot to our appreciation of what happens. He actually meets somebody else in the crime syndicate in an unexpected kind of way, but that vulnerability that you set up for the character, that he's ready for sex, he's ready for fun, and then he's something else happens to him, adds a lot to the story.
Yeah, but that was all in the book. So and that's it was one of my favorite scenes in the book. So we just wanted to make sure we shot it in the same way. So.
One of the things that's true too about the layer cake thing is that a lot of these guys don't really know each other in the story. Daniel Craig's character doesn't really know as much about the people he's working with as you might think he would, as he thought he would. And he's surprised by how the crimes thing actually works as opposed to the way he thought it worked.
Yeah, I can't say much, but I can't. Well, it's layer cake is purely, as I said, it's a metaphor for the whole. It's not just British society. It's, I think, all societies, and whether it's crime, politics, school, army, you name it. There is a top layer, and then it goes all the way down to the bottom, and people sort of, hopefully, I think most people want to make sure there's someone below them, and not too many people above them, and what one of the points about this movie is whenever you think you're near the top, there's always going to be someone higher than you, and it's also, we just also wanted to show that drugs sort of interweave amongst all these different levels as well. So, you know, drugs aren't just for the bottom feeders, should we call them? Yeah, it's also right at the top. There's people either dealing or taking drugs, and that's we just wanted to make that point that, you know, you're only one step away. And well, in the book, there's a line which I always thought was interesting, that nowadays most people have a mortgage broker, an insurance broker, and a drug dealer in their Rolodex, or now on their mobile phone, and that's sort of the point. That this isn't a pro-drug movie, and I'm not condoning the use of drugs, but what I am saying is they're there and they're everywhere, and sometimes the people you would never expect to either be taking or dealing are, because there's a lot of money in it. And I think some very powerful people like the idea of making a couple of million in the weekend where they're never going to be suspected and never get caught. So it's once you start investigating that, the whole drug business, the real business side of it, is quite extraordinary. The money and the power.
Tell us who you are, where you come from, and what kind of films you grew up watching, and if there were British crime films in that mix, or American films for that matter.
I'm British, grew up in England, born in England, and like IMDb says, I was born in Beverly Hills, which is not true. And I just grew up loving film. I mean, I watched everything that was. Someone said this to me yesterday, and I thought, God, that's interesting. When you're a kid, if someone says, "What films you watched this year?" When I was growing up, you could probably name 8, because there was no video at the beginning, and you had to go to the cinema, or then you did have a video, and you only had 3 movies, and there was no rental. And now, if you probably say that to a kid, what films you watched this year, they probably can't remember half the movies. So I don't know how. And I'm interested what sort of impact that has on kids nowadays. If there's so much, whether they're now sort of numb to it a bit. There's too much choice, and they just watch one and then another and then another, and it's not as big an event watching a movie compared to what it was for when I was a kid. But I was a film nerd. I watched everything. And it's funny how my taste changed, because I think between the age of 10 and 14, all I wanted to watch was horror movies. Now I can't stand horror films, but I watched action, romance, everything, you name it. So the ones that, the filmmakers that really struck a chord with me, was De Palma, Michael Mann, Spielberg, Lucas, Scorsese, early Coppola. No, a lot of, because everyone goes on about The Godfather, which I loved, and Godfather 2, which I loved even more. But the Coppola movie, I remember everyone goes, what was the Coppola movie that did it for you? And for me, it was The Outsiders. And as a kid, I just watched that again and again and again. So, but all cinema watched. All English and American cinema. I was to say I wasn't very good at anything with subtitles, and pretty much things shot from the '60s onwards. I wasn't great with black and white movies either. For me, it suddenly became alien. I'm sort of getting over that a bit now, but I do like. I just like entertaining good movies.
Where were you actually born in England? And how does the Beverly Hills story come about?
I've no idea. Didn't write where I was born. Paddington Hospital, St Mary's, Paddington, in London. The Beverly Hills thing, no idea. It's why someone says I was born there. It's The IMDb, I don't know where the IMDb get half their information, because I'm lost. A lot of it's just not just wrong on me, but on friends. I'm just laughing. And Daniel, I rang him up and said happy birthday. It said he was born in March or something. He's like, "What are you talking about? I'm born in whenever, I can't remember, June or something." So I was like, "Oh, sorry." So they get a lot of their stuff wrong.
Talk about what you grew up in London.
Hmm?
You grew up in London.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about that.
It's hard to say. It was great, but I think for a kid growing up is the same wherever you are in the world. It's not obviously if you're growing up in a slum in Calcutta, it's not going to quite be the same. But in the sense that everything's new and fresh, and it was. I had a really really good time as a kid. So I just remember my highlight of all my times as a kid was going to the cinema. There were 2 cinemas, and there was a Disney cinema, which is closed, which I used to love going to, and seeing Star Wars. Seeing Star Wars for the first time is probably one of the biggest memories I have of a kid in '77. Just because I'd seen, I've been going to watch. I think my favourite movie pre-Star Wars was Herbie, Love Bug, and we used to watch that on a Saturday morning it's in St Martin's Lane, and they actually had a mini Herbie when you walked in, which looked amazing, and that was on short movies. It's probably why I don't like short films, because I got a memory that short films were the boring thing that you had to watch before the thing you wanted to see, so you just sit there going, "Oh, how much longer?" So obviously there is some impact. I've worked on shorts. Shorts, I think, is the hardest medium in the world to do, to make a short film, because you haven't got enough time to set anything up or tell a story. So I respect people who make short films, but I wouldn't know how. I wrote one short, and it was tough. But I just remember seeing Star Wars, and it changed my whole perception of filmmaking. I remember just sitting there, and the yellow credits coming up, and at that age, like, "Oh, I don't want to read this." You're thinking, "Oh, this is going to be crap and too much writing," And I think if I remember the shots, stars, and we come down, and then you see the massive spaceship. And what's interesting, I still remember thinking, for some reason, that Darth Vader was in the small spaceship, and Princess Leia, because she is the princess, was in the big one. And I thought, wow, he's cool. He's in a small ship, and he goes in, and he's got the balls to break in and take over the big thing. And then it's weird watching it when you're a bit older, and you think, oh God, I totally misunderstood that. But what was amazing is there's just the themes of it were so resonant with a young boy. I loved it, But the thing I always find funny about Star Wars is everybody wanted to be Han Solo and not Luke Skywalker, which I think as a kid I remember that's what you argued about, who's Han Solo, and I think that probably took Lucas. If I ever meet Lucas, I'll ask him, was Skywalker meant to be the sort of the Indiana Jones character, and Harrison Ford the support? But no.
I wanted to ask you, it occurs to me, I've read an awful lot about the British film industry having to reinvent itself about every decade or so, sort of go out of business, and the core of British drama was the theater for a long time. I get the sense that you guys have really established a British film industry that really does exist now, that there really is a core to it. And maybe that comes out of television, the BBC and the independent television and Channel 4. They've turned out some pretty terrific films, some of which pop up over here on our channels. And it seems that production values, story values, and that there's a real film culture as opposed to merely a theater culture that occasionally condescends to do films. Do you get that sense? And if that's happened, explain a little bit about how you think it's happened.
To be honest, no. There's not much of a film industry in England. There's some great filmmakers and great film crew and actors, but it's not supported at all. A lot of people find it very hard to get a film off the ground. Very limited budgets. If you want to start raising more than $4-5 million to make a movie in England, you're struggling. Yet the irony is, we are making the Bonds, the Harry Potters, the Love Actuallys, the Bridget Jones, the Notting Hills, Trainspotting, Lock, Stock, Snatch, you know, Full Monty. So we can do it, and we are, you know, but it's a tricky time. I mean, the industry is going through a really rough patch at the moment, and the studios still, you know, they're smart, the studios, because they'll come into England and they'll pick and choose, thinking, well, he's a good filmmaker, we'll back you, you're a good film, we'll back you, here's your money, and then they take all the profits back to the States. But there's not many good places to get, how to describe it, to get film, you know, I mean, not many good British, I mean, there's some good British movies being made, but there's not, it's, I mean, I could go on and on about this, because we've had tax breaks and stuff, which I actually think harmed the film industry, because lots of people abused the system. So like 70 really bad movies a year were being shot with no intention of ever being distributed, which meant all that tax money was being funneled to the wrong places. And the lottery made a really big mistake, because the English National Lottery then started putting money into film, but their brief was, we will only put money into films that can't get made. And so that meant that they started backing so many crap films, and you're going, there was a good reason why that film shouldn't have been made. And then they're scratching their heads going, well, we made 100 movies last year, but only 2 of them made their money back. And you're like, yeah, look at them. And it's a shame, because I mean, if I ran the lottery, I'd sort of split it, saying we'll back a lot more first-time directors and younger producers and give them small amounts of money to make small films, but then put some big chunks of money into some, you know, what the lottery should be financing, an English Harry Potter or an English Bond, and really seeing the rewards of, because then that would generate so much more money that then they can use that. Do you know what I mean? It becomes an industry, not just backing small films about a dustman who likes playing tiddlywinks or something. It's just like, there's no audience there. Let's not, you know, move on. So.
Which brings me to the question, I'm about to talk to Daniel Craig, who's had a meteoric career, and I can remember when I saw him in Love is the Devil, the Francis Bacon story, just a few years ago.
That's one of my favourite movies that he's made. I thought, I'm obsessed with Francis Bacon, and I thought that movie, from the lighting to the acting, I loved it. I thought Daniel was fantastic. So.
And in just a relatively handful of years, he's now this international megastar, or about to become. And the question I was going to ask, because I had a chance to talk to Charlie Hunnam, the young guy who broke out in Queer as Folk, and it seemed like Charlie was like in America the next day or something like that. And is that because there's no point in staying in Britain because you wouldn't have any opportunity, or because what is it that allows British actors to get international status so quickly?
Probably that they're good, and they come over to America because there's far more opportunity. They can go for probably 20 castings a week in America, if not more. Where in England, they'll be lucky to get 1, 2 maximum, if that, and you get paid a lot more. You know, an English actor, let's say Charlie Hunnam, for example, if he did a movie in London, he'd be lucky to get 50 grand. You know, did a movie in America, probably get 400 or 500. So do the math, and we think, you know, what do you think? So what a lot of actors do, they will come over to America, play the villain, do whatever it is, get some nice money in the bank, and then they go to England and do a great project, which then fuels their worthiness and credibility again, and then they come back and they get more. So the good actors know how to go back and forth. Daniel, I think, will be like that. He'll do some interesting movies, then do a big one, and then a couple of interesting ones, so he keeps that credibility.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.